Hi, my name is Kevin Thomas, and this is Q5 Ham Radio. Tonight, I'm joined by the contest crew, Randy K5ZD, Dan N6MJ, and Bill W9KKN. And we've got a special guest tonight, Levi Jefferies K6JO. We're just days removed from the ARRL DX single sideband contest, and there was a lot to watch on the contest online scoreboard all weekend. Bill had a terrific result operating single op all band high power as ZF1A remotely from the Cayman Islands. Dan Craig N6MJ was on the air from Tariq's NTQV station in the Catskills of New York, and Levi was operating remotely as N1DE from Van Buren, Maine, right on the Canadian border. Beyond this crew, there was also a real nail-biter at the top of the single upper all-band high-power category between Tom 8Papa5 Alpha and Mano HD8R, that kept a lot of us glued to the scoreboard. Before we get started, we want to thank our sponsor, ICOM. From the shack to the summit, ICOM keeps hams connected, and we're proud to have their support of Q5. And I want to start with you, Bill. You had one hell of a weekend operating single op remote into ZF1A. Tell us about it.
Well, so this all kind of started after ARRL CW. Dan and Marty were kind of saying, hey, there's not going to be anybody at ZF for this contest for the sideband one. I mean, we normally some of us will go down there for the for a multi. Sometimes Levi comes down there, but it was going to be pretty much it was going to be an idle station. And they said, hey, you should do a single op high power. And I'm like, man, I haven't done one of those in a while. I don't know if I can stay up the whole time. I don't know if I can. I don't really think I can justify traveling down here a second time. But they're like, yeah, just do it remote. And, it'll be good. I'm like, okay, so I'll do that. And we started getting things together, and I decided, yeah, I'll go through with it. And it was sort of to prove it to myself that I could still stay awake, that I could sit for the whole effort. And I had my expectations set somewhat low. I mean, I'm pretty sure like 8P5 Alpha being down there. I didn't know about Manu yet, but I didn't think I had a Snowball's chance of doing anything better than a couple places down the list. But I figured I'd put in an honest full effort, and I would sit down and try to do my best remotely. So I started messing with the station earlier in the week, and there was a couple of things that I just couldn't do much about that I found. Like one was I had some RF getting into the audio, and one of the radios was sort of sounding a little funny on the air. But I tuned things up as best I could. I got everything kind of wired up as the way that I thought would let me operate it effectively. I studied Levi's logs. I looked at Tom's logs. I sort of made myself a plan, and I figured out the meals and got everything hooked up, and everything was working pretty well. One thing that I didn't quite get right was I didn't set up the SO2R and 2BSIQ stuff such that when the computer was playing audio, it wouldn't actually do the switch. I could do it manually, but it was one of these things where I was able to do this for probably the first couple hours, but after that, like it sort of got more and more difficult. And by the second day, I was such a I would say. I was such a hallucinating mess that it was basically not going to work anymore. So I kind of, I did one radio at a time and just tried to run as fast as I can. I didn't pay attention to the scoreboard really until about day 2, and then I noticed that hey, these first couple of positions are pretty close. I had KP4AA right on my tail, and I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm going all out. I'm gonna push the pedal to the metal and just run as fast as I can, get the rate wherever I can, and it was a good time. And I don't know how these guys do this as frequently as they do, but I would say I actually stayed up for all 48 hours. I did go for a couple walks. I took a shower. I didn't sit at the radio the whole time, but I was able to stay awake for the entire event, which is a first for me. I've always taken a nap or two or walked away. I mean, even during the really slow hours, I just sort of kept hitting F1 and trying to do the best that I could.
So what were you thinking about as KP4AA was closing ground with you?
I can't let this happen, man. I don't know how else to say it. I mean, I know Kenny, from our long talks on Facebook, and I decided that so believe it or not, there was someone who came on the air, and I don't know who it was. They didn't give me a call sign or anything. they said, "Don't let Kenny beat you." Now, maybe I hallucinated this entire thing, but I'm pretty sure like Saturday afternoon, somebody said that, and that's when I looked, and that was sort of when like, okay, I made a decision. I'm gonna go, and I'm glad I did.
The blessing and the curse of the scoreboard. It's a great motivator for the guy in the lead or the guy chasing, but
it was such a distraction. I wish I hadn't looked at it at all.
So you would have been just as intense? You think you would have been just as intense in the end?
No, I don't think so. I think it forced me to really kick it up a notch. I started intense, and then the fatigue started to wear on, and then I'm like, okay, maybe I don't need to be that intense. And then I saw that, and then it totally changed everything. And
then we had our West Coast guys. Dan, you were at Tariq Station, NTQV, in the Catskills, and Levi remote into Maine. Tell us about your experiences. Dan, start with you.
I had the opportunity to go to Tariq's again. I'd been there last year for IARU, and I was super happy to get the opportunity to go again. It's an amazing station, especially on the low bands. Just to give you an idea, like on 160, he's got full-size verticals for the four square, and he's got 72,000 feet of copper wire underneath. They put a lot of effort into this to be loud, so I was super happy to get the chance to operate from there. So me and my wife went this time. He's got a nice little house for us to use outside of the station. So she got to come with. And so the contest started. I knew going in that propagation was going to be challenging. And unfortunately, that really came true, especially as we got later into the contest. I had some thoughts of maybe trying for the record before I saw that the propagation was going to go down. And it just really wasn't an option. So things started out pretty well. I was a little bit ahead of Levi. I had some more molts than him, some more cues. And then I'm sure he'll tell you about it, but he actually went down for a couple of hours early on Saturday morning, and that really hampered his efforts. I was watching the scoreboard the whole time. When I do like my super serious efforts, like for Worldwide CW, I never look at it, but this time I really wanted to see what Levi was doing because I was honest, I was a little nervous. I can't let the kid beat me, so I had to make sure that I kept in that bay. And so everything was going great. And then I decided I was not going to go all 48 hours. It was just, the rate was getting so slow. About 0200, I still had a comfortable lead over Levi, both in Qs and molts. And I'm like, you know what? The rate is literally like 12 an hour right now. This is dumb. I'm going to go sleep right now. I took off for 3 hours. And so about 0530 Zulu, I wake back up. First thing I do when I get out of bed, because I was going to have a nice meal and take a shower. I look at the scoreboard, and Levi's already beaten me in molts now. I'm like, what the heck? That was a dumb decision. So I change of plans. I drive straight back to the station and jump back in, and I was ready to go for the rest of the time. And then I had a little bit of a scare because one of the benefits for Levi being in Maine is that he's going to have an opening a little bit earlier than me on the high bands. So 10, 15, and 20 is going to open just enough earlier that he can make up some ground. And he really took advantage of that. So I'm sitting there watching the scoreboard. I'm doing my best to run guys as best as I can. He's closing the gap, and then all of a sudden the power goes out. I'm like, you got to be kidding me, Tariq's got a generator and it didn't kick on right away. So I'm like just sitting there spinning my wheels. Like, I don't know what to do. Look at the scoreboard again. Levi's still closing in, So I'm like, great. This is, he's going to finally beat me, this is it. But luckily for me, I was only down for about 10 or 15 minutes, came back up. And, by that point in the morning, I'd say we're about even between Maine and New York because the propagation, it shifts after sunrise. So I think for the rest of the contest, we kind of held steady. I set myself a goal of beating Levi in molts. That was like the one thing I really wanted to do because I know he was pushing super hard in molts, and I thought I had it. The last half hour or so, I didn't check the scoreboard, but I worked a bunch of molts. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to beat him in molts. And then the contest is over, and turns out he beat me in molts. But uh, it was a lot of fun. It was great motivation having him on. It's really a shame that the station went down for those couple of hours. It was like the most important time of the contest where it went down. And so I really do think we would have been really close at the end. But unfortunately, when you're operating remotes, that's one of the things that you have to deal with.
And Levi, even though you're 6 on the scoreboard, hell of an effort. And Dan is right. If you take a look at that 2.5, 3 hours you were down, that probably was 350, 400 cues, which would have put you somewhat even with Dan. But tell us about your experience there.
You know what Dan said. I mean, I think it's somewhere around 400 to 500 cues in there that were lost in that time. It was unfortunate. I was sitting there operating, and the computer that went, so a computer crashed, and that was the computer that was in charge of all of the antenna switching and everything. So I had no way of knowing where I was pointing or if stuff was tracking correctly or any of that kind of stuff. So I couldn't really get on and operate without potentially blowing stuff up, and I wasn't going to take that risk on the second radio. And so I couldn't really do much. And that was about, it was right before sunrise, basically, on the East Coast. So it's like 1 o'clock in the morning here. And, I'm sitting there trying to figure out what's going on, but I have no way to do anything really. But, that was kind of the, I don't want to dwell on that part, but it was a great effort. I mean, it's my first time operating from the East Coast and that far north too. It makes a huge difference. And, like trying to work J's and stuff like that is such a different experience from there. And, Dan and I were comparing notes, and he was hearing all sorts of stuff to Asia that I just not even there at all. Like I never heard. So, it was an interesting experience, and, just learning about the different types of propagation, just from that perspective is fascinating from all the different stations. And, I went into this kind of blind, to be honest. I didn't really have enough time to do a lot of the prep that I wanted to and look at all the logs and get on the air, before the contest and stuff like that. I've been too busy. But I got on for the 160 contest the week prior, and that was kind of interesting. It was cool to see what I could hear. And Dan and I were, I was listening to Dan's run frequency a lot, and he was listening to mine, and we were kind of comparing notes on what he was able to hear and what I wasn't, and that kind of stuff, because he has significantly better antenna on 160. But it seemed like that was the band that I was most worried about, but I was able to keep up pretty well there. I think I edged him out on a couple mults there, but I was extremely aggressive about moving multipliers in this one, because I knew that was going to be, the worry in it. And I'm going to be interested to see where Dan's mults came from and where mine came from, because I think that's going to be much different at the end of it because of his Asia advantage. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff in the, the Pacific that he worked that I don't think I even could have if I knew exactly, even if I was assisted, right? But it's just a really interesting experience going from there. Because I've operated from WV4P down in Tennessee a lot, and being that far south, like the Asia runs there are insane. Being that far east, and then being that far north, the absorption is just way too bad over the pole. And to JA from there, I think it's 340 degrees. So it's just you're pointed right over the pole, and it's really tricky. But it amazed me to Europe how you work all these G's that are 25 watts and they're 20, 30 over 9. It's just unbelievable. Like the skip from there to Europe is unbelievable. I mean, you'll have somebody call you and you'll find out that he's QRP, and it's it's unfathomable how loud these guys are. I mean, you've got stacks on that far north, but I've never really worked guys quite I've never worked Europeans that loud before, consistently for all day long. So that was really cool. But yeah, the contest was.
That's why everybody wants to be in Maine.
I agree with that. I mean, I think as the conditions get worse, I think that it's going to be good to be in Maine. But I think at the top of the cycle, I think Dan's probably closer to the better spot because he can work more Asians, and I think you can get more multipliers that way. I think in that top of the cycle, that's kind of what I think at least. But it being that close to Europe is definitely an advantage, especially on the low bands. I mean, you are so loud from up there. And and that station hears extremely well. There's no receive antennas there right now. And I did not feel like there was anybody I couldn't hear that, I didn't feel like an alligator at all. I could hear everybody that called me. It was really impressive. There's a 4-square on 80, and man, it's, pretty loud. It's unfortunate. You got K1LZ right down the way. So it's, you got to compare to that a little bit. So that makes the when you get beat out in a pileup, you're, "Ah, damn it." But, he's like, oh, well, it's, he's got a little bit more antennas than I've got over there. But yeah, it made getting multipliers a little bit interesting because I would go to 160 and, LZ had already got the main mult to everyone already. And I didn't have a chance to really give that out as the first mult for a lot of the time. So I did try to be on the high bands like as quickly as I could because I knew they're multi-single. So I was, I'd have a radio 2 BSIQing on the, 10 or 15 way before it was open, trying to get those guys as soon as it popped open because I knew I'm like one of the first stations to get gray line in the U.S. So that was kind of one of my big strategies there.
I got to go back to this computer problem. So computer crashes, you just kind of skipped over it, but how did you recover?
I don't know what happened. So I took a nap, and when I woke up, it was back online. So I don't know what happened. And about 10 minutes before that, I got a text saying, everything good or whatever. And so I assumed that it had, some magic had happened, right? And then it turns out that no magic had happened and nobody had reset it or anything. So I don't know what happened. I don't know if it lost connection to the network or if it actually, I'm pretty sure it had actually crashed because all the logger and everything was down when I came back, but we don't know what happened. So, and we weren't able to get a hold of the guy who could remotely reset the computer, unfortunately, at that time, which, was, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning at the time. So it is what it is. But it's definitely on the list of things that need to be fixed. But, it's a little bit frustrating that I don't know exactly what happened because, who knows, it could have come back on, because I took a nap for a couple of hours because I was like, I'm not going to just sit here and watch AnyDesk try to reconnect to this thing for who knows how long. And so I don't know. I could have maybe gotten back on 10 minutes later. I really don't know. But it's the time that I lost. Whether it was back online or not, it's in the past now.
I saw you had stopped posting to the scoreboard, and it was showing the time, which meant you had quit sending information. And my first thought was, okay, remote guy, something got him, but. You say you lost a lot of QSOs and there's no question, there's a certain amount you can't make up, but it did feel like the contest was somewhat activity limited. There were only so many people, and so that did enable you to catch up a lot, just maybe not all the way.
Yeah, I felt that too, that like towards Sunday, I definitely felt like I was running out of guys to work, to an extent at least. I spent a lot of time searching and pouncing, and Dan, I'm not sure if it was the same for you or not, but I ended up kind of giving up on 2 BSIQ quite a bit on Sunday. And I think it's where a lot of those mults came from because I was going up and down the band, and even if it was somebody I'd worked before and I needed them on another band, I was just moving them and all that kind of stuff. I'm not sure if you were just kind of all of Sunday, if you were 2 BSIQ or not, but I think that it kind of actually kept the rate up. Because the rate was so low on Sunday that I was able to actually search and pounce the rate higher than run it. It was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I did kind of the same thing. I didn't do a lot of 2 BSIQ across the board throughout the contest. I did some, of course, but it really seemed to be more beneficial to be tuning around, getting the mults. I think you probably did more 2 BSIQ at the beginning because I had a big lead in mults right off the bat, but I was focusing on tuning around calling guys. And these are all guys that you ended up working later anyway. But on Sunday, I know your strategy. You did the same thing at CQ9A, so I knew exactly what you were doing. So I was that guy too. I was like tuning across. I found J51A on 15. I already worked on like, hey, where are you on 10 meters? So I got that frequency. I was moving guys left and right.
Same time.
Yeah, and more moving.
So I was doing the same thing, like moving everybody. And a lot of guys were nice enough to do that for me. And so that made things pretty fun at the end, trying to get the most molts. So. But I was definitely doing lots and lots of standard SO2R this time. I'm kind of embarrassed a little bit because I made a big deal and made them set up a third radio for me. They spent a lot of time doing this. Tariq and Scott, I know you're going to watch this. I apologize. It was I wanted to do it so bad, but it just sat there and I never touched it. It's a little bit different on the East Coast from what I'm used to on the West Coast in that regard because. When I'm operating from ND7K, especially when I'm running Asia, I've got clear frequencies. There's no frequency fights. I can get whatever frequency I want to Asia. So that makes it so much easier to be in control of these two frequencies. And that gives me the opportunity to go to the third radio. And I do that often. But I just didn't really have that opportunity because we're I know Levi had the same strategy. We were down low a lot, down at with the big boys, down in the bottom 10 KCs of the band. And, down there, people are trying to take your frequency. You're sharing the frequency with 3 other guys. It just doesn't really make it so that it's easy to even do 2BSIQ or even that third radio. So, it was, I'm happy that it was there, but man, I really wanted to use it. It just never happened. I did mostly standard SO2R.
The art of running guys while there's like 3 other guys on the same frequency also calling CQ is quite challenging.
Especially on 40. That's kind of the standard.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is that, from Maine, it's like, I feel like there's not many guys, I'm not loud to many guys in the States, so my frequency wasn't always very clear, but I'm louder than most guys to Europe. So they're there calling CQ but I'm still running guys, and I can tell by the way the timing is or whatever that it's still my frequency, even if somebody else is there. So, it makes it interesting at times.
I would say you've probably got a pretty good threshold for just, punishment on the frequency. You can deal with it and hear the guys through someone calling CQ on top of you pretty easy.
Yeah, and doing that with 2BSIQ is just a torture device. I mean, it's not fun, but I mean, you just sit there and deal with the QRM. I mean, I remember talking about this last year when I did that from the DX side. I mean, it's like you literally Sunday is just sitting there and hitting F1 on 2 radios and listening to QRM. Like it's not a pleasurable experience. It's not fun.
So did either one of you self-spot during the weekend?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every 5 minutes.
Really?
I just kept throwing it out there.
I'm not sure mine were getting out, but sometimes they were and sometimes they weren't. I mean, I need to kind of go look, and I haven't even done that yet.
I was astounded at how well it worked out. I would get on the frequency, I'd be calling CQ, no answers, and yet I know the band is wide open, and so I would put a spot out for myself, and all of a sudden a bunch of guys would call me, which tells me there's an awful lot of people who are just clicking on spots. And there's just, it's kind of unfortunate in a way, but it is the reality of contesting today. And so the more you can advertise, the more people will find you.
I was using it on MM this weekend, and it's pretty strict on how often you can self-spot. And it was pretty interesting. It was like, all right, the 10-minute timer until the next pileup has started, basically. And you have like 2 minutes of pileup and then 8 minutes of nothing, and then you wait, and then boom, it's back, and then it's gone. Like that was all Sunday was just like these tiny little packet cluster little pileups. It was pretty funny to watch. I could watch the countdown until the pileup started. Every time. It was pretty funny.
The ARRL DX contest is a little bit, it's very different than the Worldwide or WPX, because the whole world, it's really a USA QSO party. So everybody's looking for us, and so they're tuning around looking for Americans, or not tuning around, they're clicking around looking for Americans, so you just got to have as much presence as you can.
Levi, you had the added challenge of having to set up your remote station somewhere else. I think it was K6AM. Tell us about that.
Yeah, John has helped a few of us out with remote stuff, and I know he's helped Dan out a lot, and I actually went up to Dan's to grab some stuff before the contest, and that helped out a lot. He's got all sorts of little boxes and stuff that help with remote lockouts and remote headphone switching for the 2BSIQ stuff that are very helpful. He has some very creative ways of doing that through the K3s and the RRCs. And he also has more stable internet than I do. So that's a lot of the reason that I've done this stuff from his place before, when I've operated remotely into WA6TQT and ZF1A before. Yeah, he's very, very important to the reason that this effort happened. He knows the remote stuff really well. He's helped with the WA6TQT remote station a lot, and Axel KI6RRN has done a lot of stuff there as well, qualifying for WRTC and such. And so is Marco N5ZO, and that station is very, very capable remotely. And you can get, it's that station. It's pretty close to my house, right? So when I operate it remotely, it's very close to being there at the station. It's an incredible remote setup. So that's really, really cool. And so yeah, he's just helped on the tech side immensely. So that's been really nice.
So these magic boxes you talked about, you're doing, these are all on the remote side, not changing anything on the station.
Some of them. So there's a lockout at the station, and then there's this other, it's a little jumper basically from the transmit, or from the amp key lines, I believe, through the RRCs. I'm not sure exactly how it works. Axel helped with this, KI6RN. He built these cables. So basically it sends, since the RRCs don't have any way to know if you're transmitting when you use the DBKs, it sends PTT signal to the headphone switch. And that's how the headphone switch goes back and forth, depending on which radio is transmitting. And yeah, I think that's correct, right, Bill? I think you understand.
That's exactly right, and that's actually what I didn't have this weekend. So I had it for the foot switches, but I didn't have it for the locally logger-generated PTTs, and that's what was messing with me. I mean, and I was able to like synchronize my foot switches with the actual audio playouts, but like I said, that only lasted a couple hours before I was unable to mentally do that anymore. And I knew how to do it. I ran out of parts Thursday, and didn't have enough Amazon juice to get the parts in time to actually build the part that the thing that I needed to make that switching work. So I decided I'd try it manually, and that didn't work out.
So Bill, I noticed you had probably your weakest or most difficult band was 160.
Yeah.
You only had 60 Qs, like 36 multipliers or something like that there. What was the issue on that band? Because normally ZF1A is pretty loud. So, I mean, normally Stan's got us on 160 because he's on the right side of the island. He's like right in front of, saltwater. We're on the, ZF1A is kind of on the south side of the island. But, I mean, honestly, I just didn't spend as much time on it because I couldn't do the two radio stuff. So I would alternate between the three bands, and it was sort of also a question of how much of that band I could tolerate with the QRN and the fade. Where am I getting rate? Where am I getting multipliers? Most of my 160 work was just moving someone else there and working them. Every now and then I had a little bit of a run, but if you look at the other guys in the Caribbean, my 160 numbers were very similar to theirs. Yeah, it was a tough band. But one of the things I noticed is you were on like 1848 or something the first night, and K3LR was on 1846.5 or something, and I could hear you when he wasn't talking, but I could not hear you at all when he was. And then I noticed the next night you came back to the same frequency. It was kind of the same thing. I happened to find you at a time when they were off doing something else. I didn't hear them that loudly at all. I mean, I thought I had a clear frequency in a lot of cases. That sort of happens in this contest because everybody's pointing, their beams to Europe and vice versa. And I'm just kind of this thing that's south that... Yeah, K3LR, if you're listening to them from ZF, sometimes they'll go down like an insane amount if they point away from you. Like I've been listening to K3LR from down there before, and they'll transition to whatever other antenna, and they just drop into the noise. It's crazy how much... they've got some real directivity there. They really do. They really do. Yeah. Well, unfortunately, for those of us who are closer to them, they're still covering you up. So I guess I bring it up only for the fact that I was wondering, you came back to the same frequency over and over again, and no, I just kind of had a favorite spot that I'm like, okay, it sounds pretty quiet here, and like, okay, there's no one QRMing me, and I decided, okay, that's a lucky spot now, and went back there the second night. If you have the frequency memorized, it's kind of nice to, if you need to throw a multiplier down there, it's like you know what frequency it is, even if you don't have the radio there yet, and I was on like 3640 for a lot of it. Like I was way down low just trying to get a clear frequency. And then I moved a guy there like early in the morning, and there was like a net going on there, and I'm like, hey guys, sorry. Yeah, there was some poor guy on I forget what band it was on, but he was a POTA guy, and he was like calling parks on the air, and I threw a multiplier over there, and there he is, and I'm like, hey man, can I just borrow your frequency for 30 seconds? And he wasn't real happy with me, but like, well, you can have it back now. It's good. Sorry.
Any observation from you guys about the leaderboard?
Well, obviously, W2SC and HD8R was a fantastic race. SC got way ahead, both on mults and QSOs, and then I really couldn't believe that Manu managed to reel him back in. But I heard Tom call a lot of unanswered CQs on Sunday, and Manu, I think just being directly south of the United States and further away, he was in the right place. And we shouldn't be surprised because when HC8N existed, N6KT just killed people from down there. So it is definitely a great spot to be. But it's full credit to Manu because he definitely stuck it out. I mean, he was pretty intense all the way through. And what was impressive was he caught up on multipliers. Normally you would think, okay, you get behind a multi, they're probably on the low bands. You're not going to make them up on Sunday afternoon, but he did. So he found something somewhere. One of the things, Levi and Dan, when we get past the log deadline, there's a website KD4D has been building, and if you go to cla.kd4d.com, he's built a log comparison tool, and you put both logs in there. It'll give you all kinds of things about who. And I thought of this, Levi, when you said you wanted to see where multipliers came from. His log analysis tool will tell you which multipliers one guy worked at, the other one didn't on each of the bands. It'll give you hour by hour. It'll show you the deltas by hour. Given that y'all were in a really close race, it could be interesting to put both logs in there and see where the difference was.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I think that especially in the afternoons, our mults are going to look completely different. Is what I assume, because I think Dan just had a way better Asia, and Pacific opening than I did. I think that's what it's going to look like, but we'll see.
Well, I was clearly the casual guy in this thing. I only did 20 hours, and Friday night we had a line of thunderstorms parked in Michigan that made the bands really tough. So after 3 hours in, I just said, okay, there's no records or nothing great's going to happen here. So I just went to bed and woke up the next morning, and I'm starting to realize what it means to go from W1 to W8. When the conditions are really great, there's a difference, but maybe it's not that much. You don't feel left out. But this weekend, I spent a lot of time listening to ones and twos running people that I couldn't hear. And I just felt like, okay, I'm standing outside the circle. And then eventually the band would open, and the openings would be shorter. I worked a lot of guys who said, wow, you're really loud. You're as loud as you were in New England. And I'm thinking, well, maybe now, but most of the weekend that was not the case. So it was.
We've got to get this guy to W6. He's going to have a blast.
I keep expecting the JAs to be a little better, and the JAs will be very loud, but I just can't get them to call me, and I'll hear the middle and west coast guys, or like an N9 RV or somebody will just be working JAs one after another, and it just doesn't come to me. But the other thing, it's all my own fault. I moved to Ohio, so I'm not complaining. And my goal when I built the station was I wanted to be loud enough. And I think I have done that. I am now loud enough that I can work some people, but I am definitely loud enough that I can be frustrated most of the weekend. So I spent a lot of time calling people and waiting my turn and calling again and so on. So I was glad I was assisted so I could at least have that help in finding multipliers. But it was still a fun contest. It's always fun to have the whole world chasing us because we just don't have to deal with them working each other.
Before we wrap up, what's next for everybody?
Well, actually, there's two things we should talk about. First one is what's next, which for me is WPX sideband. I'm going to Victor 47 Tango to do a single op. There's a lot of competition this year, a lot of guys going down, so I'm not expecting to win anything, but it's just too much fun to be DX in a world everybody works everybody contest, so I got to take advantage of it.
So me and Levi are trying to have a little shootout again, this time from the West Coast. So I'm hoping to be able to operate from Wickenburg at ND7K, do single op from there, and then Levi is looking to operate from W86TQT. So TQT is definitely the biggest station in all of California. He's got great hardware there. And then ND7K, definitely the biggest station in Arizona. That would be another fun matchup between me and him, and we're going to try and make that happen.
So I don't have a plan yet, but I might be the road crew for Dan and try to get ND7K, back from being a multi-op last year at WPX to be a usable station for him this year. I don't know that anything besides small multi-ops has happened there since, so we need to, maybe change a couple of things to make it ready to do single up again.
I know one thing, the food won't be as good this year as it was last year.
For sure not.
You don't have KL9A on the grill.
Does anybody have any idea what Chris is going to do for WPX?
I don't think he's doing it.
It's a phone contest. I think he just brings in guest ops now. He doesn't actually do anything. Except
Lieutenant
repair his
Randy.
75. He repairs his Foursquare. That's what his job is.
Randy, you said there were 2 items. What was the second item?
Okay, well, the CQ Worldwide CW results came out yesterday, and so the results are live on the website. Everybody should have gotten their log checking report, and Dan here is the new all-time world record holder for single op all band, which is pretty darn impressive considering how hard that is and how long the previous record had been held. So, congrats to him.
Congratulations, Dan.
Now you can retire.
Yeah, definitely retiring from that one. It was a great experience, but man, that took a lot out of me. I'm sure it took a lot out of Levi too, just being the second guy. Man, I don't want to do that again.
Never say never.
If someone else does it, then we make Dan do it again.
My name is Kevin, W1DED. This has been Q5 Ham Radio with a Contest Crew 73.